After being part of the Stranger Things community for some time, I gradually sensed that the fandom had started to change. But I couldn't pinpoint what was wrong until I recently came across a debate I had about which character is most likely to die in Season 5. And it immediately clicked. The reason I felt so anxious about all of this is because the sheer number of posts and videos on this subject is absurd, and it makes me feel like the people saying these kinds of things didn't really watch the same show as the rest of us. Before I start this video, I want to say that this is purely a rant, nothing more. Thank you for being the one who listens. This could go terribly wrong or extraordinarily right, and we'll see the outcome on New Year's Eve, but here are my 2 cents. What's with everyone insisting that not everyone should live happily ever after? I swear Game of Thrones changed the worldwide mentality with its kill all the characters approach. And now people expect every show to replicate that. But this is Stranger Things. Not Game of Thrones, not Squid Game, and not any other hyper-realistic show out there. This is a supernatural fantasy about children fighting monsters from another dimension. If you wanted realism, then you completely missed the point of the show. Stranger Things is set in the 80s and carries the same core values as the movies that defined that era. Stories where the heroes eventually triumph and get their happy ending together. What is wrong with that? Why do you feel the need to see your beloved characters die to feel attached to them? Or to call something good writing? When did cinematic literacy change so much that every show apparently needs a sacrificial lamb to be considered great? Isn't it enough that you see bad news and tragedy every day in real life? Why do you want to drag that into TV as well? What's even the point of watching this show then? For me, it's a nice escape from everyday life. A world where I know things will be okay in the end, and that makes me happy. I feel good seeing all the references to the shows and movies I grew up with brought back to the screen, because I really miss that cinematic style. Most new shows released on Netflix, especially the ones that hit the top 10, rely heavily on extreme violence, so something like Stranger Things feels like a breath of fresh air in an overcrowded city. Now, I don't have an issue with shows killing off characters, don't get me wrong, but it has to fit the tone of the story. So let me get this straight. You believe everything that happens in the show. You believe in demogorgons, in an even more powerful entity controlling them whose only goal is to exterminate humanity. You believe in portals to another dimension. You believe all of this, but your only problem is that everyone survives in the end. I swear, people who think like that completely miss the point of Stranger Things. I know this will get me a lot of hate, but someone has to say it. I mean, you all know exactly what you were getting into from the start, and now some people are complaining about it and calling it bad writing. That's like saying Lord of the Rings is bad because all the main characters survived, especially Sam and Frodo, who literally infiltrated Sauron's base alone and destroyed the ring. To me, it's the exact same kind of logic. Take Will, for example, because I think his evolution is one of the core messages Stranger Things wants to convey. As Vecna said to him, the reason he targeted Will was because he was weak in mind and soul, and because he broke easily. And what did Will do? He proved him wrong. Yes, you can be weak, but you can choose the opposite. You can choose to fight. It's the transformation from victim to hero, and that is exactly the message Stranger Things wants to deliver. The debate that started all of this was a scene from the Volume 2 trailer, the emotional hug between Dustin and Steve. The moment people saw it, they immediately assumed it was Steve's death scene, that he was going to make some grand sacrifice for Nancy and the group. But why couldn't that moment simply be their reconciliation? Wouldn't that make more sense? Dustin acted like a jerk the whole season, and every time Steve tried to talk to him, Dustin shut him down immediately. I believe this scene is where Dustin finally accepts reality, acknowledges his grief, and Steve helps him through it. We don't need Steve to die to make a point. You can tell that story without killing one of the main characters. It also wouldn't make any sense for Steve to die. If that happened, it would absolutely destroy Dustin. Having the two people he looked up to most die within a few years would shatter him mentally and he would never recover. You've already seen how deeply Eddie's death affected him and how drastically his personality changed afterward. Now imagine adding Steve to that. The Duffer Brothers wouldn't butcher Dustin like that. The same reasoning applies to Eleven as well. Hopper already lost a daughter, so it wouldn't make any sense to kill Eleven too. Hopper has already had 2 fake-out deaths and then returned to the screen. Max was killed at the end of Season 4 and then brought back to life by Eleven. You can clearly see the trend here, the heroes always survive in the end. The only characters who were killed off were secondary characters introduced in that same season. The only exception was Billy, but even then, Billy wasn't a main character like Max. He was more of a supporting character like Ted and Karen. If you managed to enjoy the show for 4 seasons without any major character death, then I'm sure the Duffer Brothers can deliver a strong ending without killing their main cast. I mean, the biggest moment in Volume 1, the moment everyone talked about, wasn't the death of a character, but the moment Will gained powers and they miraculously survived. Be honest, would you really have preferred it if Vecna had killed everyone except Will just to make him suffer and regret it? And only after that Will gained hive mind powers? Or would that have ruined the emotional impact? I'm genuinely curious about your answer. As I said, I understand that it may feel unrealistic. Stranger Things creates tension by placing its characters in life or death scenarios, and the fact that they always escape unharmed can diminish that tension. But you also need to remember what kind of show Stranger Things is. In the end, the problem lies in what Hollywood has fed audiences over the last 10 years, making people believe that this is the only way a show can be considered good. It's as if the heroes winning in the end isn't satisfying unless a major sacrifice is made. To put it simply, Stranger Things was never a show that killed off its cast. Stranger Things was always a show that reminded us happiness can exist even in the most dire situations, that if you have your friends and family close, you can fight back even against a supernatural monster with telekinetic powers. This is why I don't think they will kill off any main character in the final season. In my opinion, it would ruin their legacy and everything the show has tried to convey. The 80s vibe was always like this, and the Duffer Brothers always intended a big finale that would make people feel good. While I understand the stakes, I still think people have gone completely over the top with their death predictions and speculation, and that will only ruin their own viewing experience. I can already picture the posts after the finale saying that Season 5 flopped because no one died, that there was no tension, that the characters had too much plot armor, and that the show wasn't realistic. But as I said, to me it would be bad writing to suddenly start killing main characters in the last 2 episodes. You had 4.5 seasons where the characters survived even worse situations, so it would feel very odd to suddenly change that. In the end, I know one thing. I'm glad I was part of this journey, and I'm sure the ending will bring the closure we all need. Thank you for listening to me rant, and I hope I didn't upset too many people. This is just my opinion about the show. I'm genuinely curious to hear your thoughts. Are you expecting a character to die? And if so, why do you think it would impact the story in a positive way? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, it would really help me out if you gave it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next one.